India is one of the few countries where there's really still a continual line of knowledge and language going back thousands of years. And this is with the Vimanika Shastra book. Sanskrit scholars today can still read these really ancient books, but that is unique. In ancient Egypt or in China and places like that, I mean, people, they have some early hieroglyphs and scripts, but people cannot read them. So,
you know, Michael Cremo thinks we are hundreds of millions of years old. I'm beginning to think he may be right.
You know, and that's in his books, too, and I know Michael Cremo, and also in my book on Technology of the Gods. Yeah, you look at some of these unusual artifacts. I mean, there's metal objects, chains, metal balls, and things like that. And here in North America, there's been a number of stories like that, where it's your typical lump of coal kind of story, and inside of it is a nail or a gold chain or something like that. And of course, when geologists are saying, well, you know, all this stuff's millions of years old. I mean, that lump of coal is millions of years old. Some geological formation that they blasted out. Yeah, I mean, and so, I mean, if that's the case, if everything really is, you know, millions and millions of years old, then when they find artifacts that are man-made or artificial in some way, yeah, I mean, that's an indication that mankind or some other race was occupying this planet, yeah, before we got here. There's a strange story, too, George, that you might know about, which was in Wyoming in the 1930s. They were blasting out this cliff, and inside a cleft in this cliff was this miniature person, and he was in solid rock. And there's photographs of this guy too, and he's called the San Pedro mummy. He's about 2 feet tall. He was mummified. He was inside this cliff,
fully developed.
Developed. Yeah, I mean, there are photographs of this guy, even X-rays. But where? And he's another missing artifact, as a matter of fact, and one where we actually have photos of it, and it was studied briefly, but where that San Pedro, Wyoming mummy is today, no one knows. It just disappeared.
And again, it's part of the mysteries of the ancients. And we're running out of time. I want to talk with you about Atlantis next hour as we take phone calls. Let's touch again on the possibility of ancient atomic wars. You know, again, the Vedas point out explosions, mushroom clouds. It had to have happened.
Well, I have a whole chapter in Technology of the Gods about ancient atomic warfare. It seems so incredible. Just that the ancients would have machines, that you would have to have electricity, machining tools, power tools. You're going to have aircraft, much like we have today. They apparently had UFO type craft, actually flying discs, tubular shaped craft. And the idea then that they fought these horrific wars, this is what the Ramayana and the Mahabharata were talking about. And, I mean, there really is evidence for this. Out in the west part of Egypt is this huge field of glass. This is right where, if you've got a map where Egypt and Libya and Sudan all come together, that area is uninhabited desert. It's just sand dunes and flat sand. In the 1930s, as British archaeologists and geologists went out into that area, and they're driving Land Rovers and stuff just through the desert, what they found was that for miles around in that area, there were just huge sheets of glass. And it wasn't until really the first atomic test at Alamogordo in New Mexico, where they detonated the first atomic bomb during World War II, and that, of course, did exactly the same thing. It turned the desert around Alamogordo to sand, white sands, that area they call it. So there's certain areas of the world that have also been turned to sand, but it's happened in ancient times. So, I mean, naturally, archaeologists and geologists, I mean, the idea that there was somehow some atomic warfare that, just like today, turned areas of the desert into basically sheets of glass. I mean, they just can't accept that. I mean, that just can't possibly be the answer. So therefore, they have to search for other answers. In the case of the sheets of glass out in the Egyptian desert, their explanation is that some kind of comet or asteroid came screeching across the Sahara, melted the desert, turned some of this glass, turned the sand into glass, but there's no impact for this comet or asteroid. So it somehow just kind of skimmed along the surface of the Earth, turned sand into glass, and then, went back out into outer space or something like that. So you're looking, it's looking at the past in a different way and trying to make sense of the legends, the myths, and the evidence that we can see.
Stay with us, David. We'll take phone calls. We'll talk about Atlantis next up. Hey, David, before we take calls, let's talk a little bit about Atlantis and the possible connection of Mount Shasta. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fascinating one. I do mention that a little bit in my Lost Cities of North Central America book. I mean, the whole idea, too, of ancient civilizations having some pretty high-tech stuff, including earth-moving equipment, tunneling equipment, airships like we're talking about. Supposedly Atlantis had this stuff too. I talk about in one of my books, Atlantis and the Power System of the Gods, how there was a kind of a Tesla system broadcasting power like Nikola Tesla wanted to do. These airships picked up on this power. And so the idea too of going underground, one of my books on that subject is a book called Lost Continents in the Hollow Earth, and it's all about myths and legends and weird stuff, tunneling underground, that kind of a thing. And Mount Shasta fits into that, of course. It's interesting to think of Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado, and I'm from Colorado, and Cheyenne Mountain is near Colorado Springs. Everybody in Colorado knows all about it. But here you have what is basically a mountain that's been hollowed out by the U.S. military. Inside that mountain is a city, a military city. It's a secret city in a way. You can't go in there, but the military admits they have it.
Was it a bunker?
What's that?
Is it a bunker for the Illuminati?
Well, it's kind of one of them. Yeah, I mean, they have a whole bunch of this stuff. And yet, I mean, you have this whole underground world around us. We were talking about the Hopi Indians going underground in the Grand Canyon, living with the ant people and stuff like that. I mean, it's a natural thing. And in fact, underground buildings, underground bases, whatever, these are good places to go during cataclysms, during wars, superstorms and stuff like that. Underground, if you had an underground house, it would maintain a pretty constant temperature, winter or summer. So here you have a mountain like Mount Shasta. I mean, the legends of Mount Shasta are very similar in a way to Cheyenne Mountain near Colorado Springs. You have, with Mount Shasta, the idea that it's hollow, there are tunnels and stuff beneath it. Supposedly, Mount Shasta has some kind of Atlantean city in it. Earlier stories, too, it called it a Lemurian city because it was near the Pacific. UFOs are often seen coming and going out of Mount Shasta. I've been told, actually, by people who work for Boeing that they know certain special things about Mount Shasta, including that the U.S. government has a special radar installations around Mount Shasta to watch the mountain and watch what comes in and out of that mountain. How about that?
Interesting. That is fascinating.
Similar things, too, George, are in South America. And I've spent a lot of time in Peru and Bolivia and other countries in South America. I love going down there. In my book, Lost Continents of Hollow Earth, a lot of that is about the Andes, and my book on Lost Cities of and Ancient Mysteries of South America. But there, too, around Lake Titicaca, also around Cusco,